Civics. It's a term you'll hear if you're around schools very much, and it means the study of the rights and responsibilities of citizens. It's a term you started hearing more in the late 1800s as states started passing compulsory school laws that required kids to go to school, and a lot of people asked the question, what should they learn? Well, people thought they should learn the rights and responsibilities of a citizen. And so you saw subjects like civics or courses like government or political science or some other variation pop up in the curriculum. So if you're a social studies teacher or you're planning to be a social studies teacher, then you need to understand how to teach the rights and responsibilities of citizens. And that is a big responsibility because our local, national, and global communities are depending on you to do a good job. So in this video, I'll share ideas about how to do, deliberate on, and learn about democracy. So let's go. Wait, I'll go, you stay. Before we dig into the content of civics, I'm sure we can agree that we want to prepare citizens for a democracy, not a dictatorship or monarchy or something like that. Yet, too often, students in school have absolutely no say over the rules they have to live by, the curriculum they have to study, or the assessments that evaluate their learning, or really anything. Student governments even often have no meetings with school leaders to redress student grievances, and their biggest responsibility is something like picking out the prom theme, which I'm not saying that's not important, but it doesn't really prepare democratic citizens. In the United States, since we don't bend the knee to faraway rulers of various houses, no. In the US, we sit in, stand up, and speak out. So if you help students grow as democratic citizens, then you should ask what types of citizens you want to prepare. Will they, for example, be personally responsible citizens who donate to a food drive? Or will they be participatory citizens who start a food drive? Or are you going to prepare them to be justice-oriented citizens who ask, why are people hungry and how can we restructure society to fix this problem? In social studies classes and democratic schools, we should not only teach about democracy, but we should do democracy. Do it as a way of living. If you're trying to figure out how to do democracy in your classes, then I have a couple resources for you. I highly recommend Vivian Paley's book, You Can't Say You Can't Play for younger grades. It's about a kindergarten class that negotiates class rules concerning fairness, exclusion, and inclusion in a class community with the help of a story of a magpie. For older grades or just a variety of K-12 grades, I recommend Michael Apple and James Beane's Democratic Schools. This offers a variety of examples of how to do democracy in your schools, and it doesn't look like any single thing. My favorite chapter in it is a chapter called The Situation Made Us Special, where students write a class constitution that they're all live by, where they help build community by asking questions like, who are we and who am I? Students asked questions that they wanted answered, like, why are some kids popular? Or will the earth become so crowded that some will be sent into space? Or why are politicians so dishonest? Or how did racism start? And they asked those questions, and then the teachers built a curriculum around those questions. Students also helped develop their own evaluations, and they even led their own parent-teacher conferences because they were the ones who were going to have to change their learning anyway. In both these books, teachers took students seriously, and they did democracy in their classrooms. So, the question remains, how are you going to do democracy in your classroom? I just realized you can't talk back, so you don't actually have to say anything, but maybe you could write it down as a note for you to look at later. Okay. One of the most difficult and critical parts of civics for teachers is talking about controversial public issues, but we have to do it in all grade levels. If we can't discuss controversial issues in our classrooms, then we're really in trouble as a democracy. And this is a complex topic, and social studies educators and researchers, namely Diana Hess, have published a number of helpful articles and books on the topic that I'll include in the video description if you want to learn more. Hess and others argued that thinking of a deliberative democracy means that government is deemed legitimate by citizens when the decision-making process is open to public deliberation, something that we can do in our classrooms. These deliberations encourage citizens not simply to approach controversial public issues with the question, what do I want or what do I think is best? But we can shift that question for students to what should we do about this? And even better, which option seems best for society as a whole, given varied views and perspectives? So, here's my advice for encouraging deliberative discussions in your classroom. First, you have to cultivate a community where students respect each other as equals and they affirm each other's diversity. Students will shut down if they feel their views are not respected by classmates or the teacher, or if they feel like they are the ones being criticized or who they are is being put on trial. As teachers, this can start with questioning your own identity, privilege, and the power you bring to these discussions in the classroom. Students have to feel comfortable or you're not going to be able to do this work. Second, you gotta develop ground rules for discussion with students before you get started. I recommend letting students take the lead on determining what the rules and ground rules for these discussions should be, but you should have a list of ideas that you think are important or that have been recommended by research, other articles, other teachers, and you should suggest those to the group. But it's important that students feel ownership of these rules. It's not just something you impose on them. Third, consider using texts like articles or videos or podcasts or whatever it is to start the discussions. This can allow students to deliberate on specific evidence, to weigh that evidence, consider different interpretations and points of view. And that can allow you not to fall into these traditional discussions that happen in society that are very partisan and don't really go anywhere. You should also challenge students to support their claims with evidence and reasons and encourage them to be comfortable with those critiques of their own interpretations. And this can look really different with different groups of students and different grade levels. As Stephanie Serriere and her colleagues recommended in an excellent article in Social Studies in the Young Learner, with kindergartners you may want to use a picture book like this one, Hey Little Ant. There's also a great Spanish version of this. This book is by Philip and Hannah Hoos. And in the book, it allows you to discuss issues like fairness, power, and perspectives. And with high school students, you also want to find appropriate texts that work for that age level too. But there really should be no topic, especially with older students, that's off limits. If it's something that people are scared to talk about, it probably means that they need a safe place to talk about it. And school should be that place where you can have those discussions and deliberate on what to do about them. Fourth, make sure lots of students participate in the discussion, and as the teacher, act primarily as a facilitator who asks good questions and only interjects as needed. Teachers tend to dominate discussions in social studies classrooms, and that kind of misses the point, right? You might develop a system for encouraging participation from a wide variety of students and remind students who try to dominate the discussion that there's a reason you're born with 2 ears and only one mouth. It's to listen. And finally, do not rush these deliberations on controversial issues. If you're gonna do them, you gotta leave time to really do them right. And make sure that students have time to say what they need to say and they're not running out the door and you leave something hanging that really needs to be addressed. And I'm back again. We're almost done there, right? We're almost done. Yes, we are. So thank you for sticking with me up to this point of the video. Real quickly, just thinking about the resources that you're going to need to continue teaching about civics in your classroom. I just want to make a few recommendations. First, I really do recommend Diana Hess's work on deliberating on controversial public issues, particularly her 2015 book, The Political Classroom, Evidence and Ethics in Democratic Education. It's based around a lot of theory, but also a huge study she did over many years. You might also use Google Scholar and search for articles from Social Studies in the Young Learner, Middle Level Learning, Social Education, and other journals to find more articles, advice, and lessons on civic social studies teaching. When I'm unsure of something, I often look for practitioner articles written by people who've really been studying and thinking about that issue for years. And a lot of teachers have done some great work and they've got a lot of blog posts and things. And so you should look at what else you can find out there. Teaching Tolerance, teachingtolerance.org often has articles and suggestions for discussing controversial public issues from a justice-oriented position, and so you might check them out. I also humbly suggest you check out my own Visions of Education podcast, where my co-host Michael Milton and I investigate a number of social studies topics, including a number related to civics. To study content and better learn content around civics, I highly recommend Crash Course. It's a YouTube channel produced by PBS with entertaining and informative videos, and their US government and politics playlist has 50 videos on very specific topics, and they have a number of playlists. I recommend that. All right, I hope you have found this video on civics and the social studies helpful. Please leave any positive comments, constructive critiques, or further ideas in the comments where we can practice our deliberation skills in one of the most unwelcoming spaces, the YouTube comment section. Hey, if we can have a good discussion in the YouTube comment section, then really there's some hope for the world. Have a great day, bye, and this is where I leave.